Hi. I'm not sure if we're live. Got a little bit of technical difficulties this morning, but I'm checking now. Let's see.
Are we live?
I don't know. I don't know. If we are, we're starting a little late because of some issues. Yes, I think we are live. Hi.
What is this app that we use?
The app that we use is something called Caster.
Caster.io.
Yeah. So here, we're back online. Okay, and it's actually perfect. We can start our live today. Welcome,
Hello.
everybody.
Go to your notes.
This is... Who am I?
This is Laura,
Yes, and what am I?
CEO of VMV Hypoallergenics.
Yes, I'm Laura. I'm the CEO of VMV Hypoallergenics, and this is...
Gavin, and I am her son,
You're my chief officer for what?
Sim,
For Sim.
song and intro maker.
Song and intro maker, that's right. He's been doing some of our songs and intros for our VM videos on YouTube, so check them out. I'm sorry, all of the original songs and intros for our VM videos, so check them out. And today, since it is Halloween on the weekend, do you know what you're going to be?
I'm gonna be 2020.
He's going to be 2020.
Yeah.
That's his costume.
I will not give you a spoiler of my costume.
Right. So because it's Halloween and everything, over the weekend we decided it'd be a perfect time to go over some of the more common skin ghost stories that we get to help you figure out what's real and what's kind of
Fake.
Okay, so before we get started, you like doing this part?
Yes, please like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you don't miss another video.
Mm-hmm. That's if you're watching on YouTube.
Yes, and on Facebook, like the video.
And follow us.
Yeah, follow us. Also, comment your questions so we can answer them.
Yes.
And make sure to comment early so we can answer them.
Exactly. And more than possibly any other live that we've done, this is really about stuff that you guys are hearing. Skin trends that you've heard about, that seem really popular, that everyone is selling.
That may be true or not.
Yeah, that you kind of want a more authoritative voice on, if you will. So please make sure to comment with your questions.
And we'll try to answer them.
Yeah, and do so early so that we can answer them.
Sorry, correction, she'll try to answer them.
Well, Lola, his grandmother will.
Yes.
And I will as well. So to start off, the internet, we're simulcasting here on YouTube and Facebook, is a wonderful thing, but sometimes
It's fake news.
too much of a good thing can be a bad thing.
Yeah.
Even in terms of the internet, as with all things in health and life, what do I always say? Life is
Balance.
balance. It's one of our core values in our family.
Yep.
And so, it's great to get all this wonderful information online. Medically, even for us, even for my mother when she's talking to patients, we do reference stuff online.
We get it online.
Exactly. But
Sometimes
the key is to know where to look.
Yeah.
What is legit, right?
Exactly.
So how do we at VMV know what to listen to and what is legit? And there are three main things that we do. One is we really do rely on
Books.
what is published on, let's start here, like peer-reviewed medical journals. Like that's the journal, hold on. That's the Journal of the American Academy of Dermatology. This is International Dermatology, I think it's research.
This is
Journal of Drugs and Dermatology. By the way, I just stole this from my mom. It's in her current pile of reading is about maybe half the height of Gavin. So she's in the middle of reading all of these books. No, seriously, if you walk in there now, it's about half your height.
It's about here.
It's higher?
Yeah, it's a bit higher.
It's like chest high?
Well, actually, if you put it all together, because she has like 3 packs.
Right.
Like that.
So the thing is, a lot of those resources are paid. They're not open to everybody. So it is not easy to be able to get to, I don't know, the Journal of the American Academy of Dermatology,
or
unless you pay for a subscription. It can be quite expensive because it really is for members of the American Academy of Dermatology. but your doctor will have access to these journals. So
you
if
can
you
ask
can't
them.
quite get to the journals, you would defer to your doctor. If you see a study referenced online, make sure you click on the study and see where it comes from. Is it a peer-reviewed? I know it's a bit extra steps, but it's worth it, right? So sometimes someone will send me a study, and I'll click on the study, and I'll check on the source. When I read the study, I'll first see, okay, what is the methodology? How does it look? And then I'll actually click on the journal if I'm unfamiliar with it to see, is it a peer-reviewed journal?
Yeah.
Other things that we rely on, tomes like this, also from my mother's library.
This is the Bible.
My mom has written an extremely important textbook on photodermatology and phototypes that are darker, browner and black skin, and skin in the tropics, which includes indoor protection as well, because some of us don't like to tan in these countries. So there. And then, you know, while some of these studies, there's actually one that sort of was a bit controversial lately. While some of these studies do get them wrong, or some publications are inevitably or eventually disproven, you have to remember that these people, it's their career to do all this research and all this.
I have to go.
Okay, go to school.
9:14.
Speaking of research and studies, it's their career to do the research and the studies. So if they get it wrong every so often, imagine how often we can get it wrong, or like our second cousin's third best friend's mother's pet walker who sent you something on Facebook. You know, if people whose career it is to spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours reading, writing, teaching, and researching, if they can get it wrong every so often, then imagine how often the rest of us can get it wrong who don't do that, right? So yeah, at least, and also in the scientific community, if they do get it wrong, there is a method to check on that, right? And peer review is also really great because you really you have other eyes objectively looking at the work, making sure it's replicatable. So that's primarily really what we rely on. And we do our own clinical trials and stuff, but when we submit them for publication, they are to peer-reviewed publications. So yeah, we get vetted as well. That said, the second major source that we have for sort of debunking skin myths is our own patients at VSRC, at VMV Skin Research Center and Clinic. My mom has always said, you know, good research isn't ever just academic. It's never just reading books. You do need to see patients. And so that's what we do. In fact, one of the reasons, besides our constant patch testing, that we got a sense that vitamin E was becoming an allergen was because we were seeing more and more reports of it from our clients and patients, and obviously in the medical literature out there. A top tip that we can share with you is to get information that's really more reliable instead of hooey, is to really choose a few trusted sources like American Academy of Dermatology website, American Contact Dermatitis Society, the Philippine Dermatological Society, the Dermatological Society of your particular country, and reliable news sources. Rappler, CNN, the New York Times, National Geographic, you know, the classic big ones, who again will occasionally get it wrong, but at least they have investigative journalism and certain standards that they have to adhere to, and they will print retractions, which you don't see fake news sites ever doing. So yeah, just pick a few. You don't have to read everything that's sent to you on social media. Read the stuff that you know comes from legit sources who've done their vetting. So there. So before we get to discussing some skin ghost stories, some quick reminders. You can shop all of our products at vmvhypoallergenics.com. In the Philippines, you can shop them at vmvhypoallergenics.ph. Some of our facials have also restarted in some of our boutiques, so that's pretty cool. I really wouldn't mind a nice hour of relaxation. Some of the stuff that's happening now, when you shop in the USA at vmvhypoallergenics.com, we have a nice special still, 30% off, because it's still a pandemic. on our virgin coconut oil, our clinically published organic virgin coconut oil. And again, that's one of the abstracts of one of our clinical trials. And it's in this size, which is really handy. It's actually the reason why we're putting it on special too, is so many frontliners really appreciate the size of it and how handy it is to have in their pockets so they can reapply throughout the day. And then in the Philippines, we have this cool little pouch. I get my dew, and it is filled with, it's actually called the Skin Calming Bundle, which is pretty awesome, I think, for right now. And it's got a mini oils well, which is also our organic, clinically published virgin coconut oil, but with monolaurin. It's got the Red Better cleanser. Again, calming, everything calming. And it's got the Clark Wash and conditioner. The Clark Wash is also great in this size because you can bring it with you to wash your hands, which we have to be doing anyway. I know some people are thinking the pandemic's over, but it really isn't, and we have to be vigilant. Some other things that are happening. We, in the Philippines, at VMB Skin Research Center and Clinic, we do have monolaurin pellets, which are great as an anti-inflammatory. And if you would like and online, both at vmvhypoallergenics.com and .ph, we have 10% off of our makeup removers. And the thing is, I used to poo-poo makeup removers because I used to think you cleanse your face anyway. But especially if you wear makeup a lot, like you're on TV or you're on the stage or whatever, or you just like wearing makeup, it's actually better to remove with a makeup remover before you cleanse, because it prevents over cleansing, and especially if you have sensitive skin, that's something you want to avoid. And it comes in two versions. One is an oil-free makeup remover that's just really quick, and then the other is oil-based with our virgin coconut oil, and that's particularly good for thicker makeup. And then in the Philippines, we're still screening subjects for hidradenitis suppurativa, which are recurrent boils in the folds of the groin and the armpits. And if you would like a teleconsultation with my mother or any doctor or nutritionist that we work with, drop us a DM and we can make that happen. And to help, for everywhere, remember you can send us your patch test results, and we can help customize recommendations for you based on your patch test results. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I'm actually going to start with, we're just waiting for my mom. She's sort of in the middle of a research paper, so we shall see. But we can get into some of the things. So what was really interesting in Skin in the Tropics, this is my mom's book from actually the 1990s, and it's really interesting because at the time there weren't as many studies on two things: on darker skin tones and on indoor light. So it's interesting because if you look now at some of the newer studies for visible light, a lot of that actually is sort of started here in the 1990s with my mother. And this is where she also started talking about layering as being so crucial for sunscreen protection, and not just talking about skin cancer, but also hyperpigmentation. So here she kind of gets into the different phototypes. Hold on. And so here's the thing. Back in the day, Fitzpatrick came up with 3 phototypes, and they were really sort of limited and very kind of for white skin. And later on there were more skin phototypes, and my mother really got into them. And these were some of the in vivo tests that were done outdoors in the tropics. So it wasn't just done in by machines anymore. And she really expanded testing to include not just SPF, but also PFA for UVA and visible light protection. And this is just sort of an example of some of what she does that includes, this is for testing of SPF, and that's also sort of what it looks like when you get a photo patch test. So if you have very stubborn hyperpigmentation, a patch test can certainly help you to figure out what allergens you're allergic to that also happen to be photoallergens, but a photo patch test is really very particular to photoallergens that you might be exposed to. So, on that note, I'll bring in my mom, finally. Hi. Mwah. So, to help us delve into more common skin myths, do you need something to sit on?
Yeah.
Okay. There we go. The nice thing about my mom, so Dr. Verman Veralio Rowell, can you lean back a bit? Are you comfortable that way?
I need another pillow.
Okay. Here you go.
Okay, there you go. Hi.
There.
Now you're in place.
Okay, so besides being a practicing dermatologist and dermatopathologist, she's also a widely published researcher. I showed you her book there, but she has over 200 something clinical studies published in peer-reviewed journals. And she is also, which I think is crucial to this, a teacher. She's the founder of Skin and Cancer Foundation, which is a residency for dermatologists. And she teaches residents there and in another residency program. And she lectures all around the world on everything from photodermatology and hyperpigmentation to aging and contact dermatitis and psoriasis and much, 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 much more. So she's a great source to get reliable information about skin ghost stories, right? So right, because it's Halloween, we might as well delve into, So the first one that we hear all the time is, I have sensitive skin, so I have to use natural products, or natural and organic is the same as hypoallergenic.
Yes, that is a real myth. There is actually a term in dermatology called sensitive skin syndrome. There are actually people who react. It's not an allergy. Their skin just tends to react quickly to certain things, and then they get a little bit of hive or a little bit of rash, and then it disappears. That's sensitive skin syndrome. It has something to do with the acids in the skin and all. But there are other people also who are sensitive skin in that they use certain chemicals in their skin and they either develop a rash immediately or over time of continued use of that product. And that time can be anywhere beyond 1 week, because to become allergic or really sensitive to a certain kind of ingredient in a product, you have to be exposed to it for a minimum of 1 week for the cells in your body, called the T cells, to recognize it as foreign, and not just foreign, but they don't like the foreigner.
Yeah.
So, okay, so
who they consider an invader.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's another kind of contact dermatitis. I've given you somebody who has
so natural and hypoallergenic
are
not the same thing.
Right. Oh no.
Yeah.
You can be using natural products like eating what's the best or exposed to poison ivy, as natural as can be, but you get a reaction to it any more than you can get allergies to peanuts and strawberries and mangoes, and touching the leaves and the skin of the mango as well will make you break out.
Exactly. So many natural things.
Correct.
No matter how organic and beautiful and straight from the farm, you maybe raised it yourself.
Right.
It doesn't matter. There are many, 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 many natural ingredients that are allergens.
Allergenic, right.
Exactly.
In addition, if you now buy a natural product, but it's in a bottle, it's already been processed, very, very likely there's an additional colorant to it, simply to keep the color of the original natural ingredient in it. Like, you want to keep the tomato, for instance, beautifully red looking. Chances are there's a red dye that's added to the tomato sauce or the spaghetti sauce that you add. Is it red? Do they use red?
Even if they didn't, though, that's
Yes.
the point, right?
Then-
Like, even if you were to use, let's say, if I had a lavender lip balm or
Yes.
something that felt incredible, it smelled beautiful and completely natural because there was no other additive in there. Lavender is a top allergen, and I love lavender. I love the way it smells. I find it extremely calming and soothing.
Right.
But it is a top allergen, and it's also a top photoallergen.
Correct.
So you'll see sometimes lavender farmers with really severe hyperpigmentation just from being around the plants. And in fact, one case I remember from you that I found really interesting, she had a patient who was who had really, really stubborn hyperpigmentation. And she was already being so good about using hypoallergenic things, no allergens, no dyes, typical photoallergens, dyes, preservatives, fragrances, right? And she was being so good, except she also was a gardener. And so they finally did a photo patch test and found she kind of couldn't be around her plants.
You're right.
So, yeah.
Photoallergic.
So there are many natural ingredients.
I want to stay on the natural thing because I have lots of patients who come to me and are proudly saying, I'm using a natural product, so this has got to be good, and yet I'm developing this and that. Well, there are 3 ingredients in particular in natural products, in addition to the nature-built thing that's there. And they are a preservative, because preservatives are needed for any product anything that's already in a package, for it to maintain its stability as well as the claims that it does. So that would be a preservative. Many of them are photosensitizers as well as sensitizers. In other words, they can cause an allergy to the sun, let alone just cause an allergy by itself. The second would be the fragrance that she was talking about, like lavender, and any of the nice smelling things, including the aromatherapy oils, which are very nice smelling, because those are also photosensitizers as well as contactants. And the third one would be the colorants. The colors are the reason for this white hair is not just because of age, but really because I'm allergic to dyes. So they're very common allergens and commonly added to the natural products you're using in order to
which is not to say, I think it's important to underscore that natural is bad.
No.
Eating organic food is probably the best thing you can do for your body. So, if we can use a natural ingredient like virgin coconut oil that is non-allergenic, not a photosensitizer, we will opt for that. But definitely, there's so many natural ingredients that are allergens, it's hard to find something that we can use. But certainly for eating fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, these things that aren't raised on chemicals and hormones is always the better way to go.
Correct.
No? So just to be clear, you touched on dye, so I kind of want to go into that. Another skin myth that we get is, but I use a hair dye with henna. It's just henna, so it can't be a dye.
The natural henna is red in color. And if you really use the powder, that's, you can actually buy those things, pure henna, whatever, 100% henna. That will most likely not give you an allergy. But most of the henna products that my patients will come bringing in are packaged, and they come in different shades of brown and reddish tint and that. Well, I look at the ingredients, and most of them will say it contains paraphenylene which is the black dye that people will use to make their hair black. But shades of it, or a number of that, plus additional dyes, will also make that color brown. So it's no longer a
just
natural
pure henna. And in fact, a few years ago in the news, I don't know if you guys saw, but there were many reports about severe reactions to henna tattoos.
Ooh.
And again, because some of it isn't pure henna.
Right.
So are we saying basically pure, real pure henna is not an allergen, right?
Very likely not.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing any
exactly.
studies.
But what she's saying is it's unlikely to find, especially a permanent hair dye that says pure henna. If you really look at the ingredients, it might have other permanent dyes in there, and that's what causes the problem. So there. Okay, so another one that's a big trend is something called skin mapping or face mapping. This was really new to us in BMB, and then we got, certainly, I don't know if you've heard it from your patients, but
I haven't.
You haven't yet. So the notion is that if you have a pimple in a certain part of your face, that means that you have a problem like in your liver
Oh, okay.
or in your kidney. What is your take on that?
First, let me give you the impression that there is something good about skin mapping. We dermatologists actually do a skin mapping for patients who come in with freckles, and more than 5 or 10 that we immediately see will say, well, let's take a look at the body and let's take a look at hidden areas, even down to the toes, in between the soles, depending especially upon the color of that patient's skin. But we will do a skin mapping, meaning we'll actually take pictures and then map out the kinds of moles that are present on the face, on the trunk, and the lower extremities down to the feet, because especially in people with darker brown skin, there's a tendency to have more of what we call the acral melanoma, which is affecting not just the skin but also the nails, and very often they're in the feet. So yes, we do a skin mapping because there are several sort of stages or ages of a mole. It can just start out as a freckle, then becomes a what we call a lentigo, which is a freckle that has become a little bit thicker and elevated until it becomes a bigger one called solar lentigenes, or Hutchinson's melanotic freckle, and usually is found in the temples.
Lentigenes, Hutchinson melanotic freckles, folks. Write it down.
Beyond those kinds of relatively not problematic yet, but we tend to do a dermoscopic examination as well when we do a skin mapping to see the stage that it is in. And the beauty about a dermoscope is very often we can make a diagnosis without having to do a skin biopsy all the time of your skin spots, right? And then in the mapping, we will put already the moles or the things that need to be examined every 3 months or every 6 months, or come back after a year, depending upon the benignness of that thing.
So, okay.
But then going to the skin mapping that was talked about reminds me of some other areas of the body that people look at and say, you have something wrong, and the eye is there or whatever. I believe very much in listening to other disciplines, holistic and functional functional people. I love talking with them because I want to listen to what they're saying. But I am really a very science-based and peer-reviewed kind and research-based kind of a doctor. So show me the paper, show me the meta-analysis, or show me something that can make me be certain about the associations that are being given, and then I'll believe it. But I'm very open to listening to things.
So, okay. A few things to unpack there. Skin mapping, maybe not officially called that way, but it does exist. With dermatologists, among the things that they might do is mole mapping, where they will keep track of moles in your body throughout the mole's lifespan to make sure if it turns malignant, they catch it early, right? And then skin cancer can be dealt with. Another type of skin mapping we've touched on in previous live streams, doctors, especially who are specialists in contact dermatitis, will really look at the patterns of your reaction or your skin darkening or even your acne. So they might ask you to disrobe, or will look at your face and say, okay, where are we seeing, what is the pattern of distribution of your skin problem? That's a sort of mapping as well. The thing about the position of an acne being indicative of, say, a liver problem, we haven't yet seen clinical studies that are published in peer-reviewed journals to show that these are replicatable findings, right? So as of right now, it doesn't seem, it seems like a good old ghost story. However, doctors like her are very open to exploring natural remedies. In fact, the reason she got so into the research behind virgin coconut oil was because of that, right?
Yes, exactly.
So
I would like to add something to that. In truth, the skin is the gateway into the body. And there, in fact, are many things that we see in the skin that leads us to say, okay, you may have PCOS, that's an
polycystic ovarian
syndrome, because of the kind of acne that we're seeing in the skin. Or you may have diabetes mellitus because we're seeing this diabetic dermopathy is what we call it on the legs, or you may be developing some kind of pigmentation or striae or whatever on the skin. These are all in the skin, but looking at that, I'll say to the patient, I'm going to refer you to a good endocrinologist who's going to look at you about this, because it may be a very early sign. You may
Right.
not be actually diabetic already,
Right.
but I believe in prevention, so better to start.
So it's it's skin mapping in the sense that the skin can be a window
Yes.
or a clue that something inside needs to be checked.
Mhm.
But it's not so direct. It's not like if my rosacea is
Not on
here
the face.
or my pimple is here, then I have to go see an endocrinologist.
Right.
Right. Okay, so we touched on something that you mentioned. Is skin cancer only a problem for very fair-skinned people?
We used to think that. We used to think it was only in adults as well, but we're getting to see more and more of them in young ones, pediatrics cases, and yes, exposure to the sun, for instance, will take about 19 years before there's enough mutation of the cells in your body to eventually become a melanoma or a basal cell carcinoma or a squamous cell carcinoma. But perhaps from epigenetics, maybe, is the reason why some younger people are already developing cancer of the skin even earlier in life.
Right.
But
And
added
it's
to that,
not just for white people.
it's not just for, definitely. A lot of, mentioned earlier about having dark, the darkest brown skin, having melanoma at the feet in particular, because those are the areas they usually come out. And the thing about them is they're very often misdiagnosed.
Exactly.
Because people have this thing that it doesn't exist in darker skinned people. With that
Exactly.
myth, it isn't
Or it's
diagnosed,
diagnosed
properly
late.
or quickly.
Because
there you go.
for us who are darker, and I include myself there, as pale as I look, because I'm actually a brown woman. I'm a mixed person, right? But certainly my shade of brown on darker into the deeper tones, we can definitely get skin cancer, and many times it manifests in actually under the nails, let's say, places you don't tend to necessarily think of as
Right.
sun exposed.
Right.
And
That's true.
we don't, because we're so trained to think of it as a white person's problem, we don't pay attention to our moles and to our growths. I have a friend with a growth on his hand, and I saw it and I was like, have you had that seen? And he was like, why? I was like, because you want to make sure it's not malignant. But we just don't have that in our top of mind, let's say, and we really should.
In regards to the nail that Laura just mentioned, nails are common areas where we always look if there's a change in the pigmentation or a linear streak or something like that, because melanomas can start there as well. Then remember, cumulative sun damage from years of exposure can then eventually produce that. And now I therefore warn you about those UV lamps or lights that they're using for when you're having your nail polish. That's just another additive to
Right.
that exposure to UV. I think it's UV. And
Exposure.
remember, visible light now is
Yeah.
contributory, and even UV infrared now contributes to oxidative processes in the skin.
Infrared is from heat, oxidative is basically aging.
Right.
Akashira, it's nice to see you back. Thank you for joining us. Is it true that crossing your legs causes varicose veins?
No. One of the most important is really genetics. What are your genes? If you're looking at your relatives and your parents, and they have varicosities, then you have to early in life already begin to be preventive about it. And that is, if you have a work that is sitting all day, like especially now in COVID times, and we're having to sit in front of computers for webinars, etc. It's good for you every hour. Like my daughter always reminds me, Mom, have you done your walk around?
Get up every hour and walk around.
Yeah, get up every hour is a good idea, to take a breath.
What they say studies are showing now, I just read one in the New York Times. They referenced the study, I want to say out of Harvard, but I don't remember. And it was something like the best is really for every 2 hours of sitting, get up and walk around, even just for 2 minutes. So it's 2 minutes walking for every 2 minutes of 2 hours of sitting.
Yeah.
Which is even better than using a standing desk, which I use. But now I try
do
to
that, and I do a little bit of arm
just
and
get moving.
whatever I can.
Another one on varicose veins. Is it true that washing your tired feet after a day's work or standing for long hours can cause varicose veins?
The standing for long hours, definitely, but on
Washing your feet at the end
your
of the day.
feet, no, I'm not familiar with any studies on that.
Okay. One, do parabens cause cancer?
Curious. Everything can cause cancer if you really think about it, including the chlorines that we're using nowadays. There is a product, and it can be from an indirect way. There's a product called dioxin, dioxin. Remember that name? And it is a byproduct from the manufacture of chlorine. And what happens is, as it's manufactured, of course, it can get eventually into the soil, and from the soil it then gets into whatever that it may be fed for cattle or whatever. But dioxin is one of those exposomes. Those are the things that are being studied more and more as part of our external environment, that in addition to exhaust fumes and things that are emitted from factories and whatever, those are now being examined, and population studies around the world. The ones I can quote right now are the ones in Washington, D.C., in Hong Kong, in Thailand, in Wuhan, in Wuhan and several other, Shanghai, I believe, and other cities, comparing the skin of women and men, I believe, who are exposed to all of these things that are in the atmosphere.
But that's for skin. That's not for varicose veins.
That's not. Yeah, I'm really sorry. I tend to wonder. That's
Which
that's
we
one
love.
of the.
That's why we're here.
That's one of the reasons she's here.
No, but it's important to know this
Major
stuff.
reason.
Okay, so parabens and cancer.
Parabens and cancer. It's one of the preservatives, and it used to be that anything that was paraben free was perfectly fine. It didn't produce. We're talking first about contact dermatitis, which is a form of oxidative process, let me say. That's a T-cell reaction.
So jumping in, okay, quickly on parabens. If you look at the American Cancer Society, they are pretty clear about their stance on parabens, that the one study that basically went viral, that scared everyone about parabens, is because they found estrogen in the bloodstream, right? And the American Cancer Society and the US FDA, etc., and many other people have looked into the study and said, it was one study, and it does not conclusively show that the estrogen was present there because of parabens. And there are other things that produce more parabens, even us naturally, in the body. So as of right now, the evidence for parabens causing cancer is pretty weak. We don't tend to like parabens because they are contact allergens. So we tend to recommend that people not use anything with parabens, but more for a skin reactivity issue than because of a cancer issue. Which leads me to another myth, actually. What about how much of the stuff that you apply on the skin gets into your body?
Depends upon the size. One of the most important things is the size of the molecule that we're talking about. If it's higher than what we call 500 Daltons, then it hardly ever gets into the skin. It just stays on the surface.
Because it's too big
It
a
works
molecule.
there on the surface of the skin, but it's too big a molecule to be able to penetrate. Well, steroids, of course, topically, they're very tiny molecules. They go
get in there.
So I have seen patients who've been using steroids for a long time, and developing actually some form of Cushing's disease, or actually going into Addisonian failure, because of the steroids that are circulating, exogenous sources of steroids circulating in their body. So, yes. Thank you for reminding me about that paraben study. That's right.
Yeah. But it depends on the molecular size of what you're using.
Right.
And that's sort of related to another question about pregnant and breastfeeding women not being able to use any skincare whatsoever because it'll get into the bloodstream and affect the baby in utero. Again, this very much depends on what we're talking about. If we don't tend to use, for example, nanoparticles in sunscreens or anything else. And part of the reason is sort of that. We don't quite know. She doesn't tend to recommend sunscreens or products with nanoparticles because while there are some studies that suggest it's really not a problem, there aren't enough. Right. And if they're small enough and can get to the bloodstream, who knows? But for the most part, especially like a cleanser, that you're putting on and you wash off, it's not going to get to the bloodstream. It's kind of difficult. If you're pregnant, though, or lactating, there are certain ingredients you just have to avoid, period, because they're so potentially dangerous to the fetus that you don't want to risk it at all. One of them is retinoic acid, because it's a known teratogen, which affects the formation of the baby. So, I mean, you're not going to be glugging the retinoic acid, but yet and still, I don't think you'll find a single dermatologist or gynecologist saying, yeah, go ahead and use the retinoic acid while you're pregnant.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a thing.
In regards to that, I feel there are some really serious people here, serious about finding relationships between this and that. If you're that and you're worried about certain things that may affect you, you should learn to go into the Cochrane Library. There you can look for studies, what we call meta-analysis from systematic reviews.
Really nice.
Those are the terms.
Okay. Meta-analysis.
Systematic reviews,
Yes.
and meta-analysis.
These are basically legit, awesome, very well-researched reviews that look at multiple legitimate studies published in multiple journals all over the world for a pretty good range of time.
Yes.
And they look at, hey, this looks like it's consistent among so many different studies. That's why it's so helpful, because it's like looking at one study that shows you what a bunch have shown.
Yes.
So those are meta-analyses, or what was the
What
other?
they do is they do a systematic review that they collect all
Systematic
sort of
review, yeah.
Let's say thousands, so 1,500 studies, and then out of that they really look thoroughly into their scientific validity, and then they narrow it down to those that are really
Right.
valid, and then that's what they do a meta-analysis on.
She did a bit of one for virgin coconut oil and monolaurin.
We're doing one now.
There you go. So it's worth looking at. Penny Lane, it's good to see you back. Darkening of skin under eyes and the back of the neck. Is this a sign of heart disease? Is that a truth or a myth?
Just darkening and not swelling. Darkening only. Darkening can, of course, lead swelling of the eye lower lids can lead into darkening, but by itself, I don't really know of any such direct,
Correlation.
The thing is, the eye can be a sign as well of internal diseases, in the sense of looking at the lower lid. If it's very swollen every day and it's not due to an allergy or whatever, it may mean you have some kind of thyroid problem, for instance. And those would ask, if I see somebody like that, especially if it's only one side, then it's really okay, folks. Let's go and find out what's going on here. But yes, the externals can lead to questions
Right.
about it.
But just darkening like that is not directly indicative of a heart problem.
Correct.
Interestingly enough, she had a patient who had darkening on the neck, and the patient thought that it was a contact allergy to a necklace, and she suspected an endocrine issue, which it turned out to be. So skin darkening can imply
yes.
definitely
Definitely.
certain health problems.
Right.
Okay, another question that I really liked here from Ruth, who's actually with us. If you pull white hair, will more white hair grow in its place? One of my favorites growing up.
No. You'll just be pulling the white hair, and because maybe your hairs are not so many anymore. That means you still have black hair and you have white hair and you want to pluck the white one.
Yeah.
Nah,
No.
nothing. It
No.
will be okay, except you'll miss that one for about 3 months while it recuperates from the pulling.
So
The
there,
hair
so,
root is left behind.
so you might be causing yourself alopecia, but you're not giving yourself more white hair.
There actually is a disease called trichotillomania.
Trichotillomania.
And what it is that some people, especially in young people, this is while they're thinking or being, they absent-mindedly
They
pull at
pull.
the hair, and before you know it, there's an irregular
Bald
area
spot, yeah.
of hair loss. You look at it, you look at the kid, and you say, well, let's do it this way. Stop picking at your hair.
Another one I used to hear a lot growing up is, does shaving actually cause your hair to grow back thicker or rougher than waxing?
I'd love to see what the men really say about that, or what women who shave their legs actually say about that. As far as I know, there are no studies on that. I'd be curious if it stimulates the hair roots so that they thicken. do they thicken or do they actually thin down? One would think that steam, when you keep really shaving it close, is that the question?
No, just shaving versus waxing.
Ah,
So one of the things I heard is shaving seems to make your hair grow back thicker and rougher because it's a sharper cut.
but it isn't really.
But
thick
it isn't really
in
thick
diameter.
or rough. Yeah, it just feels that way because when it grows
I
back,
agree.
it's a rough,
I agree with that.
sharp cut versus waxing that pulls it out from the
And
bulb.
you expose more
Yeah.
surface area when it starts to grow back. You're right.
So what about collagen supplements? Either collagen powders or collagen pills that people are selling.
I'm not really much for supplements, and there's a good reason for that. That's really, relatable in published studies, including from the National Institutes of Health Complementary, Integrative Medicine section department. But I actually look at that as a study done by Francesca Choi from Taiwan. It came out early this year or early last year, and she actually said she was able to do a systematic analysis, a meta-analysis from a systematic review, and she actually said there seems to be a possibility that it may be good, but the studies were few. I think she went down to 16 or 17 studies that were actually good studies, and she said it seems to work. So watch out for it.
So there's potential.
There's potential. Yeah.
Right. So it's not completely.
Yeah.
But for now,
this
it's
was
just
orally
potential,
taken,
right?
mind you.
It's just potential. We don't know. But
Applied on the skin.
Yeah, please,
applied on the skin, though, I think collagen is a long splayed out fiber or protein rather. So I haven't looked at the Daltons, but if it's too big a collagen that's being put into that thing, it's a great great moisturizer. It's,
but it won't stimulate more
collagen formation.
Yeah.
Right.
We have a related question. Do face serums really work?
Which serums?
Face serums, because there's a trend now for vitamin C serums for collagen production, niacinamide serums for acne and dark spots. Do these serums really work?
Okay. When it comes in creams, they don't. I don't think they work at all as an antioxidant, because then that chemical that is the vitamin C or vitamin A or whatever has to become absorbed down into the second layer of the skin, which is called the dermis, for it to be able to act as an antioxidant. These creams are basically antioxidant ingredients, and do they survive the processing? Do they survive the colorant and the preservatives that are added to the cream?
Yeah.
Vitamin C, the proper ones and there are some doctor-made vitamin C products. You should take a look at them, and they're or vitamin A, and they come in dark brown or sealable kind, opaque, with very little opening that you can get out of it, because they're very easily oxidized and become useless.
Vitamin C is notoriously unstable. So extracting it so that it survives long enough into the processing to make a cream or a pill is actually not so easy.
Right.
It's pretty difficult to do. And then when it's in storage, like she was saying, it's very photosensitive, very photolabile. So it tends to degrade very, very quickly.
Correct.
So it's unlikely that you'll actually get any of it left on the skin. Plus, you're talking about something that's topically applied on the skin, trying to produce more collagen. It's kind of unlikely. Related to that, then, there's a big trend about overdosing on vitamin C and zinc.
Right. Well, there are many studies that have shown that going beyond what's called the RDA or
The recommended
daily allowance is not good. There are many studies, and you can look this up, that show that when you go beyond the RDA of a product, it may actually do a rebound opposite effect for you. So don't do that. Many people, when they are being told they're vitamin D deficient, will tend to get the vitamin D and say, okay, I'll
overdose.
recommended is one, I'll overdose, I'll take 2 or 3 more.
But remember to supplements.
Don't do that.
Unless your doctor prescribes you a supplement because you're iron deficient or you need folic acid because you're pregnant or whatever. Honestly, a lot of the vitamin supplements are not really. First
Eat
of all,
it. Eat your vitamins.
Get it from your food is really the best thing. From fresh veggies, fresh fruit.
Right.
Another typical myth: if I have acne, my skin is dirty.
No.
No.
Not even the bugs there are really bad bugs. There are 2 kinds of organisms in particular that are native to your hair follicle because they do the work of eating up the food that you eat and going into as lipids into that sebaceous gland. So what they do is the sebum that comes out, they then these organisms act on it so that it breaks it down into the fatty acids that then is secreted upward and becomes part of that barrier mortar that protects you against the environment.
So we have because we started a bit late because I had technical issues, we have about 10 minutes left. Just a 10-minute reminder, folks, if you get your questions in there, we're trying to remember as many of the questions that we've received that you guys have asked us or patients have asked her. So definitely, please get your questions in the comments to make sure that we can answer them. I have one here.
I have one myth. I will happen to review the Harvard blog or Harvard publication on 10 myths, and what caught my eye is this one. Antibacterial soap is better to keep your skin clear. No, it isn't. Especially not on the face, especially during COVID times, especially for anything. The reason for that is because it depends upon the antibacterial that is used. If it's any of the chlorinated hydrocarbons or brominated, like hydroxychlorothiazide.
Holy cannoli. Again?
Hydroxychlorothiazide.
Say that 3
it's
times.
the most common.
Hydroxychlorothiazide.
Even triclosan, which was used by the soap manufacturers to replace, because dermatologists proved to them that those chlorinated hydrocarbons was causing the severe photoallergy of people it became very popular being used, but continued use still of other soaps that have antibacterials may not be very good, especially on the face and on exposed areas of the body.
There you go. Smiling or laughing will cause wrinkles, so don't.
Oh boy, no! It's the wrinkles are primarily formed from age, but age is not as important really as the fact that there are lots of exposomal things in the environment, both external and internal, that produce wrinkles, and those can be, of course, primarily sun exposures if you are in the car and driving long distances, and this gets exposed even with the window up, because the window will still allow UVA to get in, and UVA can produce oxidative processes in the skin as well as pigmentation.
Yeah,
you'll get more wrinkles on the left side, and the right side will be relatively nicer looking.
I was also on a live stream yesterday in the Dominican Republic, así que si ustedes tienen preguntas en castellano, también podemos contestarlas.
Okay.
But one of the things I talked about is, when your skin has good elasticity, right? If you pull it like this, it's oddly enough, it's also a trick to find out if your cat is dehydrated, I just learned. But if you do that, you snap, and the skin snaps back. The elasticity is still pretty good, right? So when you're talking about wrinkles, when I smile, then of course my face wrinkles. See, Tuva smiling. but it should snap back if it's healthy, hydrated, well cared for, not aged prematurely and oxidized because of the sun or smoking or bad food or whatever. As I get older, obviously those things, it's oxidative process, aging process is natural to us, right? I personally take the view that I like my laugh lines. I have such an awful resting witch face. So everyone thinks I'm really scary.
Great,
thank you. But I look really harsh. So I try to smile actually more to offset that. Okay, I have another question.
By the way, I'm 81 years old. Let me smile and see what the wrinkles look like.
Okay, another common myth,
Enough.
we've addressed it enough, but we're going to repeat it, is virgin coconut oil
Oh, wow.
is comedogenic.
Oh my
I got
God.
this even yesterday. Si te tapan los poros. No, absolutely not. The studies that talk about virgin coconut oil being comedogenic are based on really old studies from the 60s and 70s that were done not even on people, they were done on rabbit ears. And they were controversial at the time because they weren't so consistent. And since then, a group of doctors, Dr. Draelos, Draelos, you can look them up, etc., have had newer methodologies for determining the comedogenicity and acnegenicity of different ingredients. And certainly in our clinical trials, virgin coconut oil is just, it's not an issue.
Years ago, I went into this thing and reviewed Draelos, and we did an actual study, but it was only on 7 or 8 patients, because that's what Dr. Draelos did in her own study, where she compared doing an actual on the skin study versus doing it in rabbit's ear, which is the old one that she was talking about. And when we did it, I did it on coconut oil and several other kinds of oils that are long chain. Remember, and this you people will like, size does matter, especially when it comes to application on the skin. Because remember, I thought about the Dalton 500. Well, it's the same thing with the things that you apply on the skin. Size does matter for, and coconut oil is short and medium mostly. About 65% of its fatty acids that it produces is medium, short to medium. They're shorter. They're nicely like that. Whereas all the other oils basically are long chain, so they're bigger. They're long chain, going up to 14, 16, so 16 and 18. So you know, they are the ones. So in our
More
study
likely,
with for comedogenicity, we showed that coconut oil is definitely not a comedogen.
Right.
But the longer chain are.
Yeah.
We never got to publish it because the reviewer said there are very few subjects. I said, "Son of a gun, we're just following Dr. Draelos." But anyway, I
we're in
think
the middle
since
of that now, so
apparently
I'll give
this
you more.
myth continues, I'm going to get another resident
Right,
do
but there are other
a
ones
study
out
on
there.
20 at least.
There are other ones out there on human skin that you can look at that are newer, and these ones are more consistent. Other things that I want to make sure we get to, is there such a thing as reef-safe sunscreen?
That's what?
Reef-safe, coral reef.
Coral reef sunscreen. Well, there is a lot of question going on around now regarding the ingredients of sunscreens, whether they're safe, whether they bleach the corals, whether, you know, they're safe when the fish somehow gets them because, you know, people go into the water and all those kinds of things. And so therefore, that's why we're reviewing them. But this is perhaps one of the reasons that most of the time the sunscreen I'll give to patients with really problematic skin are those with the larger molecules like zinc oxide and titanium dioxide. And why I tell them also that in addition, especially because of exposure to much more visible light indoors nowadays, I tell them to, in addition, do layering of iron oxide containing cosmetics. And we've shown that again in our study, as far back as
but reef-safe wise.
2000.
Reef-safe-wise.
Reef-safe-wise.
There are 2 that have been proven, that have been banned by Hawaii.
Yes, and that's the reason for that thing from the FDA early
Right.
this year.
And also, again, look at nanoparticles. Nanoparticles are far more likely to sort of
Correct.
make it out there and survive in bodies of water.
Right.
Chemicals, this is sort of the last one I think we can take because we have about a minute. Chemical, skincare is toxic. I never use chemical skincare. I don't use chemicals. That's the statement.
Everything that you use, I'm sure, is a chemical.
Yeah, I
Nowadays.
every time I hear this, I like to say, you know, water is H2O.
Its molecule is a chemical, yeah.
H2O is hydrogen and oxygen. Everything in nature, everything
Is
in the
a-
world
is
has
a
a chemical signature.
She probably means a synthetic chemical.
I don't know.
Man-made?
I think people
That's what
say
you
I
mean?
don't use chemicals. I think people like to say I don't use chemicals. I only use natural organic things. And I think the myth there is to think that natural organic things are not chemicals, because they are. If we're talking about things that are highly synthesized, highly processed, potentially harmful chemicals, that's a whole different thing. right? The other thing I think I'd like to speak on quickly before you go is this idea of toxicity.
Yes.
I don't use toxic skincare or toxic makeup. From a medical perspective, toxicity is really particular,
Right.
right?
So toxicity in relation to the environment, I talked to you a little bit about dioxin and all of those airborne gaseous chemicals, as well as metals and all that. So those are all toxic, by the way. So stop using your car, and don't use gasoline anymore and things like that. That's okay.
Well, I mean, use it,
Until
but
you can use your what's
Okay.
the name of that? Oh, okay.
so to be specific,
Tesla.
okay, a worry about toxicity is if you inhale all the carbon dioxide being emitted by your car, right? Then you have toxicity in the bloodstream, and you got to get it out because you can't breathe. Toxicity is poison. Toxicity is something very particular, and if you have sort of a toxic substance in your body, this is a very, very serious thing. You probably need an emergency room. You probably need charcoal treatment and whatever to get rid of it. So the idea of toxicity in skincare is a bit of a misnomer. Not really a thing. No?
Yeah. There may be irritants in skincare products.
Right. Things that are irritating might cause allergies, but not toxic, right? So there. I think we're good. I think on that note, we could say goodbye.
We're done. I have to go to another thing.
I know. She's already distracted. Thanks, Mom. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye,
Happy
everybody.
Halloween.
Keep safe, and yes, happy Halloween.
Okay, so I will quickly, I guess, summarize some of the stuff. There's really okay, so there's a lot of exciting trends and whatnot, and some of them are hoo-ha, and some are legit, and definitely the good news is there is a way to make sure that you look at trusted resources. So again, if you don't have access to peer-reviewed dermatology journals, your doctor probably does, especially if they're boarded and a member of these organizations. Also, you can look, if you're looking online, someone sends you a cool new trend, something that's being sold. Oh, look, this study says this and that. You can always check the study yourself. Sometimes it's very technical and difficult to read, but at the very least, you can click on the name of the journal and check on how legit is this journal. Google, is it a peer-reviewed journal? What do people say about it? Google the title of the study to see if it's myth or if it's well reviewed. If it's picked up by other legitimate news sources, that's probably a good bet. And do trust legitimate older news sources that practice investigative journalism. Again, will these doctors and will these institutions and will these news sources get some things wrong? Absolutely. But these are places that catch each other. That's why peer review is there. That's why the investigative process is there. They will print retractions if need be and corrections that you won't see in a fake news site, right? So that's important. And there, as a quick review, you can get all of our products on vmvhypoallergenics.com or .ph if you're in the Philippines. In the US now, we have our 30% off special on our clinically published virgin coconut oil, as well as in the Philippines and the US, we have 10% off our makeup removers since Halloween is coming. It's kind of perfect. And then in the Philippines, we have our I Get My Dew pouch and our Skin Calming Bundle, which has the Oils Well Mini. It has the Red Better Cleanser. So all very skin calming and awesome, which, again, 2020, I just don't think we can get enough of this stuff. And Clark Wash and Conditioner. And there, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions for us, definitely write in the comments on Facebook and YouTube. We answer our questions. In fact, I just started putting up Ask a Skintellectual videos, and we'll do more of those where we take your questions to us and we answer them as best we can. If you're interested in a teleconsultation with my mom or any of the doctors we work with, drop us a private message and we will help make that happen. And remember that if you've had a patch test, you can send us your results and we can customize recommendations for you based on your particular allergens and even possible cross-reactants. So that's really helpful. And certainly let us know in the comments if there's anything else you would like us to cover or speak about. There are videos now on YouTube on keratosis pilaris, maskne, and then we have live streams planned for hypoallergenic versus natural, I think. Let us know what you would like to learn more about, and we'll make that happen. So there. Otherwise, please like and subscribe on YouTube, and like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter as well. And I'm always happy to answer questions. I'm on Instagram at Laura, LauraATVMV, Laura at VMV. And I think that's pretty much it. I think we're good to go. I'm going to wish everyone a very, very happy, safe, but also fun Halloween. You know, if there was a time to sort of dress up and cast the demons out, this is the year to do it. So happy Halloween, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Bye. Till next week.